Welcome to Charlotte Readers Podcast, where authors give voice to the written words. I'm your host, Landis Wade, and as you can see, we're not in the podcast studio today. We're at Park Row Books, sponsor of the show, and I'm here today with Linda Phillips, an author who appears in Season 2 of the podcast. Linda, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Landis.
Yeah, so you've written poetry and young adult fiction and verse, but you tackled some difficult subjects in your work. You've dealt with mental illness and you've dealt with difficult diseases. What is it that draws you to that kind of work?
Well, the first one, my book Crazy, didn't start out to be a book. It started out to be a cathartic exercise to understand, having grown up with a mother who had bipolar disorder. So it was kind of self-serving. And then one of my best writer friends suggested that it would make a good novel, and it ended up being a young adult novel because those were the most difficult years for me, growing up with my mother.
And do you find these to be hard topics to write about?
They are, but from the heart. So, and then the second one kind of resulted from my teaching experience when I met these students with this rare neurodegenerative disease. So both books just kind of evoked a lot of passion and compassion in me, and I tried to kind of purvey that in, through
and
the books.
they're young adults, so they're accessible to the teenagers, and
Right.
you're trying to speak their language.
Hopefully.
Right? Yeah, okay.
Hopefully.
Well, on the podcast, you read a poem called Oceanography that deals with your mother's struggle with mental illness, and you and your family used to take a trip to the beach, right? Now,
On the West Coast.
On the West Coast, not Myrtle Beach, where you got the vision for the poem, right?
Right.
But on the West Coast, right?
Correct.
So, how about reading a little bit of that for us?
Sure. It's called Oceanography. The water. Icy shock treatments. Surely mother prefers this to the state ward. Milligrams of fishy, sticky, salty therapy. And for me, a cautious stay along the edge, because only daddy knows where the best agates beach. But the sunset is the whole purpose, the only relevant point of the mission. The day having built to a crescendo, a tribal urge to gather in one final ritual of unity. Exploding over the horizon, the epiphany of color pierces the windshield of our weathered green Chevy. Now, late in life, my children swim deep and I learn, with resignation, to relate to an ocean that quietly turns out the lights at the end of a long, hot day.
So, is that how you thought about where your mother went when you were young, to the Nuthouse?
Well, we often ended up there when she was coming out of it, and it was like a respite and sort of a reuniting, having after she had been in the state hospital.
Which you thought of as the Nuthouse.
Yeah.
And it was the same hospital as?
As One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest,
Right.
the Oregon State Hospital.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Did you see Jack Nicholson while you were out there?
I didn't see him there, but I was there to visit my mother.
Was it hard for you personally, being a teenager, dealing with a mother who was suffering this illness?
It really was. It was the 60s, so it was a silent era within the society. My father was a taciturn Norwegian, so it was silent in our house. I kind of took a self-imposed secret code, secretive, keeping everything to myself, a vow of secrecy, so that I didn't even tell my best friends. There was no therapy, no talk therapy. Certainly my mother was not on the best meds at that time. So, I didn't suffer, but it was difficult.
And that experience inspired the book Crazy, right?
It did. It
All
did.
right. And you've got a section, we always like to start at the beginning because you pull us in with the beginning. Let's start with Beth's opinion, which I think Beth's her is the protagonist's friend, right?
She was the best friend.
Yeah, all right,
Yes.
well, let's hear from that.
Okay. So everyone in the whole room focused on my teeth to determine what my basic color was. The class decided it was brown, as in mud, rats, rotten bananas, swamp water, and dirty anything. I ran out the side door after school. Thank heavens, home ec was last period, thinking my cheeks were so hot they must be leaving a trail of smoke. I stopped by the canal, swarming with hungry pelicans and screeching gulls, and I wondered, just wondered and wondered, for I don't know how long, what it would feel like not to sit and dangle my feet through the slats and daydream and watch like I usually do, but instead to climb up on that railing and let myself just slip off and down and down and down. I decided against it because, of course, I'm not the crazy one in our family.
All right, so you got sort of the middle school thing going on there. They're picking out the kids. They're poking fun at them. She's talking about whether she jumps off a bridge, and then she says, "But no, I'm not the crazy one."
It's questionable at that moment.
At that moment, okay. Well, it's great that you've done. This has also led to some work for you in a national organization that deals with mental illness.
Right. Now, NAMI, National Alliance on Mental Illness. Yes, I have.
Seen some commercials on TV about that recently.
Yes, which is a good thing.
Yeah, it is. They didn't like your title first when they met you, right? Crazy?
They didn't.
Yeah.
They didn't. They said, we're trying to stamp that word out. But after they got to know me, they invited me onto the board and they embraced me.
And you appropriate that title, right? Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So what do you think of the podcast?
Landis, I think this is the greatest thing that you could have done for the writers in this community, and I'm really, really honored to be a part of this. And I'm telling my friends out in Oregon, hey, you got to tune into this. Yeah.
We get a few listeners from Oregon. Maybe that's where they come from. Yeah.
Could be, but I appreciate it, and I do thank you for what you're doing.
All right, well, thank you for doing it. Well, that's it for today. Another fine author giving voice to her written words. If you'd like to listen to Linda's full episode on Charlotte Readers Podcast, you can do so on Apple Podcasts, wherever you like to get your podcasts, or at our website, charlottereaderspodcast.com. Until the next episode, I'm Landis Wade for Charlotte Readers Podcast.